Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Here today on the DM Guide, we are going to be taking a look at one of the most exciting, no-holds-barred, adrenaline-fueled subjects possible for gaming. We're going to be taking a look at finance and business and how to make all of that interesting. Okay, so let's be honest here. It's really dry, and while there is some stuff that is interesting about it, it's hard to make that interesting as far as gameplay goes. But there are certain ways you can go about it. Certain things that you can do to help make those kinds of checks much more interesting. Now, for some games like Shadowrun or even D20 Modern or any of its variations like Past or Future, that can bear a bit more relevance as, well, for example, those knowledge skills exist within those particular games. Whereas with Pathfinder, Rollmaster, Dungeons & Dragons, any number of other games that have more of a medieval fantasy-ish setting, they're not quite as readily applicable. Those skills don't quite exist, but you can always just house rule them in. Your DM can create the relevant skills, honestly, knowledge skills or any kind of skills relevant to this particular subject can just be penciled in and just accepted as the general rule. But how you go about all this just really depends on, like anything else, how deep into detail you want to go with it. Now, just to avoid causing yourself a lot of headache, I'd say try to keep things generalized rather than go into exact specific details. But there are still some things you can do to make this more interesting, and that is to treat it fundamentally like combat roles. There are going to be target difficulties, and there are going to be certain things that are required, certain business skill checks, or even bluff or diplomacy. These things will be relevant in how you manage to run successful companies and businesses, or at least have them engage in economic combat rather than actual physical violence. Now, why would you want those particular skills? Well, one, you want somebody with a solid amount of business acumen. It only makes sense that somebody with a knowledge of businesses and the civics and the laws regarding around the functions of businesses and how businesses move and operate to be making these particular checks. They're going to be the ones that are guiding this particular formation of people and assets towards a hopefully successful outcome. But you're also going to need somebody with a knowledge on how to operate with the public, how to make the public move and dance to the whims of a company, how to get the public to perceive the company in a favorable light, even in the face of failures and mistakes. So you need people that are able to put a PR spin onto things. So social skills and socially adept people and overall charming people are going to be necessary for a company to function. And also, having legal experts on hand doesn't hurt either. Legal experts with an insight into business and finance, as well as local laws and state ordinances. Those will be important for making sure that the company avoids stepping into any legal troubles, whether or not they're engaging in legitimate or illegal business activities. So having these people in place will be absolutely essential. And again, I say treat this essentially like combat roles. If the players are running a company and they're operating in a particular market, assume that their market is going to have competitors who are going to be looking to get different business contracts. And the players are going to want to make the necessary business and civics roles and knowledge checks in order to try to lock that down. But in order to keep the players engaged with it, they can go on and send out people to essentially engage in diplomacy in different business meetings and try to engage with the contractor well, the person giving the contract, to try to get them to see why going with their company is going to be a benefit for them in spite of whatever cost available. Or the players can even highlight that, hey, we do cost just a tad more than our competitor, but we guarantee our results in a way that they cannot. Things like that are going to just sound really good and honestly just really help with those diplomacy roles and help to get the contractor and to go with them. But there's also other ways they can go about things. Their competitor may well resort to illegal means of trying to secure contracts by bribing the person handing out the contracts, or persons, or or other companies. And then there's even things where the players and their company can engage in activities like insider trading, trying to get the inside track on what other businesses are doing, so that way they can respond appropriately to the market with knowledge that other people don't have, giving them an edge in all their business activities. And that could be reflected in some kind of a bonus on their roles, or even the players just simply saying, we are investing this much money into this company because publicly they would say, we believe that this company is going to do well. We see this as a sound and solid investment, not only for ourselves, but for others, and jump in ahead of the game before the stock price rises, as the company unveils a new, exciting, and capably and competently put together product rolls out onto the market that causes that other company's stock price to just shoot through the roof, allowing the players to recoup a tidy sum on their investment. Or, as the case may be, if through their insider trading contacts, or however you decide to go about making that check, they find out, this company's doing horribly, the new product that they're supposed to be rolling out is going to be a total flop. Well, the players can get out ahead of the game and either pull their investments, not invest, or invest in a competitor, because all that really needs to happen for one company to succeed over another is for the opposing company to just absolutely fail and flounder. It will drive investors away from them, and investors are going to look to jump onto something successful, or at least something that's stable. And something that's stable, that's having its competitors fail, is going to do very well for itself. And again, this is another spot where you can have the players taking a more direct hand in how their company functions and whether or not it succeeds. And Shadowrun especially reflects this particular idea very much so, and that is corporate espionage. You can have the characters go out and sabotage a rival company's product, or their unveiling line, or kidnaps the scientists or researchers involved, the manufacturers, whatever kind of schematics are available. The players can go out on a mission to retrieve that information and bring it back. Now, ideally, they would do this almost entirely in stealth with a minimal amount of damage and a minimal amount of attention drawn, because the more of a ruckus that's caused, the more likely it is for the company at hand to retaliate against the suspected competitors. And not only could the company potentially retaliate, but remember I mentioned legal troubles earlier. Well, law enforcement could get involved, regulatory agencies could get involved and begin conducting their own investigations, attracting all sorts of attention that a business would not want, that the players would not want involved with their business. And that's where having capable legal representation would come into play, especially well, both in dealing with any legal matters and avoiding stepping into little problems and exploiting different loopholes within legal systems, but also in dealing with legal repercussions of any potentially illegal activities that a business may be engaged in. Now, again, you could get into very, very specific detail if you really feel up for writing up all sorts of legal codes and regulatory bodies and how they go about their business. But ideally, it's easier to just have the lawyer make their legal knowledge check. in order to deflect or defeat any particular maneuvers a regulatory body or legal investigations may be making. And for instances where, say, okay, the lawyer successfully made their check, but they're still not entirely dissuading any regulatory body, well, you can again involve the players and have the players handle disposal of evidence, or if they can't dispose of it, at least remove and relocate evidence elsewhere to a safe spot where any regulatory agents will not be able to find it. All of these methods can go about greatly towards helping make this kind of gameplay much more interesting and engaging, and give your players reason to pick up those particular skills. Or if a player has made a character who is more book smart, is business savvy, is charismatic and charming, knows how to run a business, if they make that kind of a character, then it is especially incumbent upon us storytellers to make those characters relevant somehow. Now, they may not necessarily always be engaging in business. They may be called to task to engage in other adventuring aspects, any number of degrees of violence. But given that they are a business savvy character with a number of resources at hand, they can easily deck themselves out with some pretty high-end gear and also supply that higher-end gear to the players. But there's all sorts of risks and rewards with that, because, say this is a fantasy setting where the players are running a successful mercantile company, and the character who is specifically the head of the business, they have the business acumen necessary to make the business function properly and generate a profit. That's just while it is a great resource, it's a resource that can be attacked by rival businesses, rival adventuring parties, or any number of other enemies that the players have made. So while this can be a resource that generates a huge advantage for the players, a resource that valuable is an inviting target for those with the means, the will, and the drive to attack or acquire that for themselves. And that's just a very, very generalized way in how you can make business and finance much more interesting for your table, for your games. And I highly recommend you look into it. And definitely, if you have opportunity to do so, take a look at Shadowrun. The ideas behind businesses and finance are absolutely fantastic, and I did mention before that I'm going to be taking a bit more of a look, maybe kind of explaining and going into a bit more detail about what exactly Shadowrun is and what it's about, maybe even reviewing it in the process. But with that said, I think we've wrapped up for today. If you liked today's video, consider liking down there below. Or if you've been enjoying content overall here, why not consider subscribing to the Gamers Den? We're always happy to have more people. And if you didn't like today's content, well, go ahead and throw down a dislike and go down into the comments below and tell me what you feel like was a problem, what you feel like could have been improved. Or if you just want to tell me how much you hate me, well, go ahead and throw the comment down there anyways. And if you like the content, then, well, hell, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below too. Gotta balance out all the negative and the hate. Not that I'm a large enough channel to be attracting much of that yet. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You guys have yourselves a good night.